Welcome to beautiful Cancun. The subject of today's video is lessons learned. I wanted to share 10 do's and don'ts of wedding photography. Now that we are in the off season and I had some time to reflect on this off season, I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned both this year and in the past, hoping that it will save you a lot of heartaches and money in the process. Let's start with number one. The first one is setting expectations. One of the biggest issues that I ran into this year is basically clients who, after I've delivered the final product, asking for revisions. Now that's not out of the norm. Any client will likely ask you for a few revisions. However, you're gonna run into those, unfortunately, who will have for some reason completely different expectations when you deliver the final product. And I believe whenever I do a booking to really set those from the get-go, and I do that through usually a 1-hour consultations before booking them, and I also send out a detailed contract that outlines all the products that I will deliver. And so usually I don't have these issues on the back end, but for some reason this year I ran into a few issues, and the one that I'm going to speak about is a client that more so was happy with what I deliver. However, the family, which I'm not sure whether they were a significant contributor to the wedding expense, put in a different level of expectations and pressure, which required that I do significant amount of revisions on mostly the video that I usually deliver. What my typical package includes a number of pictures and also highlight films. These highlight films are usually 5 minutes. And whenever I do deliver my highlight films, they typically would range between 8 to 12 minutes. So that way the client is usually more ecstatic because they're getting additional footage at no additional cost, and I want my clients to be happy. But for some reason this client wanted something significantly longer, and I agreed to do it. She asked for something in the range of 29 minutes to 45 minutes, which I told her that I will see what I can do based on the footage that I have. But I managed to deliver a 30-minute film when it's all said and done, which took another 4 to 5 hours of my time. And so I billed her for it, and the client seemed to be in awe that I essentially sent her a large bill. And so when that client asked for these revisions, she said that she didn't mind paying for the work. The mistakes that I made, the issues that I'm going to hold myself accountable in this particular scenario, is that at the time I didn't quote her the number of hours that I would have worked extra, nor the amount. I didn't want to discourage her from asking for these changes. And so when I sent the final product with the added invoice, it seemed to be that the client was really not happy with it and would have liked to have known about this. Mind you, she did agree that she didn't mind paying extra, so maybe the amount was a surprise to her. Lessons learned: when you do run into these type of issues in your end and you are asked to do something significantly different than what you would typically deliver before you begin doing all this extra work, my recommendation would be to ensure that you speak to the client and let them know at least give them rough estimates, so that way you don't run into unhappy clientele. Now the client did settle the bill, and that was essentially the last piece of communication we had. I don't think she was happy when it's all said and done, but I think I gave her a fair quote. Lessons learned for next time, so don't make the same mistakes I did for this particular situation. Topic number 2. So now this segues perfectly into setting expectations, but more so communication for this particular situation. So for some reason this year I've been running to the same problem, and that is vendors who do the exact kind of work that I do, showing up to the wedding, not being told about it in advance, and these can create a number of issues when you are a photographer, you will learn quickly that positioning and being in the right spots to capture the best possible angle is going to be key to delivering a quality product. Unfortunately, when you are competing against another vendor who is also doing the type of work you're doing, which is photography, well, it's going to be problematic. You're not going to probably be able to deliver the same quality you will typically do if you were working alone or your own second. And so I would suggest in your contract to ensure that they are aware that you should be the only vendor at the wedding, so that way you can do the best possible job that you can. If a client may not be happy with that particular clause, then perhaps have an alternative clause that states that you will potentially not be held liable for a vendor that's interfering with your work. That way, when the final product is delivered and then have an issue with the quality, then you can go back to that specific piece in your agreed contract and say, hey, you brought in an additional vendor that was duplicating the work we were competing for positioning, and now I couldn't do the work that I can to the best of my ability. And that will protect you when and if it goes into litigation. So that's my second lessons learned for today. Lessons learned number 3. This never happened to me before, but some reason this year I ran into a situation where a wedding ceremony started without actually being there, which was quite unnerving, to be honest. And I don't think I am responsible for this particular situation, to be quite frank. And I was lucky enough that my clients were one of those really relaxed, easygoing clients, so the issue was never discussed afterwards. But this was a situation where I happened to be with the bride, putting in the final makeup and her dress on, and I'm in the room with her during the getting ready, and we're moving to the ceremony location. And I get ahead of her and I get to the place, and I realize that the groom and the bridal party already walked down the aisle, and the ceremony has essentially started without me being where I would typically be, at the very front of the ceremony, I guess the aisle, if you will. And that was quite unnerving, to be honest. I was extremely surprised that this happened. And could I have mitigated the situation? Probably. Communicating with my couple might have helped. Now, mind you, in my defense, this year I was mostly working with DIY weddings where there were no planners or coordinators, so it was basically DIY. So lessons learned, going forward, I will try to speak to whoever calls a shot and ensure that, not to start a ceremony without me, because now I don't actually have images of the groom walking down the aisle, nor do I have the bridesmaids and the groomsmen walking down the aisle. And when I delivered the gallery, I was quite nervous about the feedback that I got from my clients, and they were super happy about the final product, so that's great. But mind you, I would have preferred to have those images when it was all said and done. So lessons learned: if you are in a situation where things are happening without you at the beginning of the day, go find out who's running the show and go let them know, hey, I need to know what's happening at all times, so that you can always be in the right spot at the right time. So that was my fourth lessons learned this year. Okay, so now I think this particular situation, I think we're all guilty of it. I would say most wedding photographers have a gear acquisition syndrome issue, where we tend to buy too much gear initially at the early stage of our career. All that excitement, we think buying more is better for the quality of the products we deliver, and sometimes it can help, but it can also hinder. So using too many cameras can be problematic, especially if you are like me, a photographer that does hybrid coverage, which is doing photo and video. We need to work a little bit harder to deliver the promise that we made to our couples. And so I typically will use 3 cameras, believe it or not. And this situation can be problematic because one person can only do so much, and I prefer to work alone. If you've watched any of my shorts, you know that second photographers aren't my favorites, if you will. And so my suggestion is, when you are doing wedding coverage, I am suggesting you really simplify your process and try to use the least amount of gear so that you can focus on the moment rather than trying to manage multiple cameras. At the beginning, when I started offering video with my packages, I was running into situations where I was using a camera for photo and a camera for video, and I had to go back and forth, which would unfortunately, 1, raise my stress level, 2, lead to missing shots. So now I actually just have one camera dedicated to video that's basically on a monopod on a tripod at the very front of the aisle with me, that's facing right down the aisle, and it's recording the whole time. And by just doing that at the very beginning of the ceremony, I can just focus on photography and I don't have to go back and forth. And I think that helped alleviate a lot of the stress and also allow me to capture the best possible pictures that I possibly can. So again, try to limit the amount of gear that you're using. One popular issue or one popular suggestions by photography educator is to work with multiple prime lenses. I suggest you try to actually use zoom cameras like a 24-70. That way, during the events, it's more important that you capture the images than to have the best possible picture possible or the most amount of bokeh of possible. You can always go back to your prime lenses down the road when it's less critical and there's less hustle and bustle going on. A 24-70 is super helpful to just stay on one camera and focus on the moment rather than juggling multiple cameras trying to get the most blurry image possible. All right, so make sure you simplify your gear list when you do this for a living. The do's and don'ts of wedding photography, number 5. This one has to do with memory cards and batteries. If you start offering video packages along with your photography, you will quickly realize that you're going to run out of memory cards and batteries quickly. Video is so demanding, especially on batteries, that you're going to need quite a few in any given day. And so I started carrying. We're going to take a break because here in Cancun, they love their motorcycles and scooters, and we have one running full tilt down the street here. So I'm gonna give it a second and we'll resume our lessons learned number 5. All right, as I was saying, batteries and memory cards. If you offer videography like I do, you will quickly realize that you're going to run out of batteries and memory cards quickly because video has a lot of demand on energy. And so I'm using a prompt for this particular lesson learned. I've started carrying a fanny pack with all of my batteries on me at all times. So if you use a backpack and that's where you store all of your batteries, that's great for you. But sometimes you might be away from your carry-on, and so having everything you need on your body is really helpful. So that way you don't have to move away from a critical moment and go back to your bag. If while you are doing this, you really can just switch batteries quickly and then move on with your day. Now I've also started carrying memory cards in here. So this is how I manage my memory cards in any given day. So I have this little booklet with all of the memory cards that I use. I might run through, given that I use 3 cameras in any given day, I might run through at least 8, possibly 10 memory cards, because obviously I shoot on dual slot cameras, and so they demand two memory card per I guess session. And so by having all of this on my person, one, I can get to it whenever I need it, and two, it really puts me at ease, because I don't know about you, but leaving important memory cards anywhere can lead to theft, and the last thing you want to do for your business is lose someone's wedding, because that can derail your entire business permanently. Having a negative review on your Google business page or any of your testimonial page can really destroy your business. And so I personally keep this bag on me up until I get home and I start uploading these images. I don't leave this anywhere, and I rather lose cameras and have to spend $3,000-$4,000 replacing them than to have to call my clients and let them know, I apologize, but I lost your wedding and I can't do anything to basically mitigate that. So carry your memory cards on you, buy more memory cards than you think you'll need, and also buy more batteries that you think you'll need. That way you don't have to spend a portion of your day having to recharge them. All right, lessons learned number 6. Be prepared. This business requires you to really be prepared for anything. And so one issue that I ran into this year more than any year was my engagement session locations being occupied by one event or another. Obviously with the pandemic, there were a lot more outdoor events going on than any normal year, and my favorite spots were often occupied by one musical event, or I don't know, there was a number of things going on all over the place this year in Ottawa that really had to up my planning game, if you will. I typically will like to take my clients to 1 or 2 spots, because I like to have a combination of scenery. I always look for water and buildings, structure, and some greenery, and I have 2-3 places within the city limits that I like to take my clients for too. And this year it happened on a number of occasions that they were being used by other events. So make sure that you have alternative location that you can take your clients to. You don't want to have to reschedule. You will look unprofessional, and your client's time is the most important thing to consider. By removing as many pain points as you possibly can, it really reflects good on your business and also future referrals. So come prepared. All right, so this do and don't, I will fully accept the bonehead decisions that I've made, to be honest. Not so much a decision, but oversight, I should say. And that is not realizing that sometimes you're gonna find yourself in ceremony locations that are so silent that you can hear a pin drop. And I didn't realize that my cameras, one of my camera had a warning beep before the shutter goes off, and like as I mentioned in this video, before I do video. And so in photography it's not so much a problem because there is no audio or sound. However, when you are doing video, noise will be capturing the audio. So the Fujifilm X-C3, the default setting, when you press the shutter, it will go click, beep, and then the shutter will go off. And I realized that it was recorded in the groom mic during the vows. So I essentially had to deliver a wedding film with the vows, with some background noise, with beeping noise that's been recorded in. So I'm not an audio engineer, so I can't remove those myself. So I had to send them in that way. Now I have removed that that sound from the camera. So now it's fully silent, so I don't have that issue. But I never realized it until this year that it can become problematic if you are in a situation where it's a really quiet auditorium and you could hear it. When you are outdoors, you won't hear those kind of noises, but when you are really indoors in a tight space like that, make sure that you do the best possible, that you're not making any noises if you can avoid it. So item number 8, cameras overheating. Now this is a known problem across the board. I like to film all of my films with 4K resolutions and 60 frames per second because I like to slow that down for my highlight films. Now, a lot of cameras, especially mirrorless cameras, there have been made in the last few years. I believe a lot of them, if not most, suffer from the overheating issue, especially when you're running a 4K camera for long periods of time. And this is a problem, especially when you are doing a religious ceremony that's running, more than, half hour. Sometimes it goes into 45 minutes. And when you are running continuous 4K for that length of time, the camera is inevitably going to overheat. And that's a problem because that can lead to you missing key moments like the first kiss or part of the vows, and you can't have that. Mind you, how to solve this problem? Now I'm going to contradict something I said earlier, which is don't work with too many gears. But in this particular situation, if you can be prepared and have like a backup camera ready to go if you run into a situation where you overheat. Mind you, I will typically run with 2 cameras for 90% of the day, and I will run with 3 cameras for 10 to 20% of the day. I usually will have a 3rd camera on a tripod just doing video during the ceremony, and I might also use it for part of the reception during the first dance and so on. So if and when it did happen to me that one of my camera overheated, I could quickly dedicate one of my other cameras that are on my harness to just pick up the video portion of the day, and I can just keep going that way. But be aware that if you're going to start offering video and you're going to be running 4K full resolution, that your camera is going to overheat. Hopefully Fujifilm and these other camera brands are going to come up with a solution to this problem. They do offer aftermarket accessories like a fan that can attach to the back of the camera and cool it that way, but I don't like to use these kind of accessories because they often get in the way. But I would suggest that if you can have, at the very minimum for this part of the day, have spare gear, then it's gonna really, prevent you from, moving or losing part of these critical moments of the day. All right, lessons learned number 9. For a long time, I had a hard time running high ISO on my camera. I feel very uncomfortable running anything above 6400 ISO on my camera. Mind you, I am shooting with a Fujifilm branded cameras, which are known to be crop sensors, so they're APS-C sensors, so they're smaller than the standard full frame cameras, and they can introduce noise a lot sooner than any full frame cameras. And so that was a problem for the first few years, which I tried to limit my ISO to under 6400, so I don't have too many grainy images. Now, as I invited to weddings where there's quite a few different sceneries, you might find yourself in very dark environments and you will have no choice but to run some pretty high ISOs. Now this year I started running 12,000 no problem. With the introduction to Adobe Lightroom, my worries with grainy images are no longer there anymore. So I run it as high as the camera is willing to take me, and Adobe does an excellent job in cleaning up that picture. And for video, running 12,000 ISO, honestly, don't see an issue with it. The image isn't too bad. The quality is still there. So if there's one thing I can suggest going forward is don't be afraid to run high ISOs. It can really help with the quality of the images that you're delivering and save you time on the back end when you are actually doing any edits. So run them as high as you possibly can and move forward. Item number 10 of do's and don'ts of wedding photography. I don't know about you, but this year my wedding season went well into the winter season. For some reason I was still shooting weddings late December, early January, and I don't know where you currently reside, but when you are doing weddings in that late into the wedding season, you're basically in full winter, and that requires that you go outside with your camera gear. And so learn to have backup gear. If there's one recommendation, one lesson you can learn from this video, and is that luckily with this particular issue, it was not too big of a problem for me, because on any typical wedding day I'm gonna be running 5 lenses, so replacing a lens is not an issue for me. But for those of you who are just getting started, who are limited, working with a limited set of equipment, make sure that you have sufficient enough gear in the event that you run into this problem. And my problem was when I went shooting outside with my Tamron 17-70, which I love. It is arguably the lens I use the most, and it is my favorite lens. And started to fog up when I came back inside in a more heated environment. Now my 17-70 is my do-it-all lens, but I also have a 24 that can do almost a similar job, so it wasn't too much of an issue for me to switch to the other lens and let the other one clear up. But if you run into that issue, running with one particular lens can take you out of your wedding day, and that's essentially really unacceptable, not being able to do your work simply because you ran into a problem. So make sure you have enough replacement gear, because gear break, gear malfunctions, and anything can happen, and you can be affected by weather. So be ready for it all, and your business will do well if you prepare. Your clients will forgive a lot of issues, but not being able to do your job at the bare minimum is not going to be something that they're going to slide by, and lawsuits will kill your business. And so make sure you have sufficient gear when you need it. All right, well, that was all that I wanted to share today. I appreciate going to the end of that video with me. If you like this kind of content, I would appreciate it if you would leave me a comment below, like and subscribe, and watch my other videos. I have a whole slew of business strategies when you are running a wedding photography business. And thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.